Good morning. Richard Jones, new headmaster at Bryanston. Very warm welcome to you this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I should think Bryanston's looking pretty fantastic on a day like today.
It is. I'm very lucky. I've got a lovely view outside of my office looking out over the fountain in the grass tennis court. So it is looking splendid in the sunshine.
Fantastic. Richard, as I just mentioned, you've been newly appointed as head at Bryanston. I believe that you were second master and then interim head before that. Yeah. Do you think that your journey has given you a 360 view of the school?
Absolutely. I think as you say, I started last year as the as senior deputy head. So that was September 2020. So in the middle of the pandemic. Yeah. So I think in terms of me getting to know the school and kind of having that accelerated learning process, that very much happened in my first year. And lots of, whatever industry you're in, I think people will say that year of managing through COVID was the equivalent of probably 3 or 4 normal years. Yeah. So yes, I learned an awful lot about the school, but at the same time, there's certain things that are happening now this year for the first time, or sort of they happened pre-pandemic that I'm seeing for the first time, some of the traditional Bryanston set pieces. So there's still a lot of learning going on from my part, but definitely having been here for a period of time before becoming permanent head has definitely helped.
Yeah, I bet. Absolutely. And out of interest, who or what inspired you into the education sector, and how did your career path lead to Bryanston?
Yeah, interesting question. So I never, it was never on my radar to go into teaching, if I'm perfectly honest. I studied economics at university and thought I would follow that path probably to the bright lights of London, but then had a change of heart in my final year at uni, and then actually went and did a couple of other things in recruitment and energy procurement. And then actually it was a friend of mine, one of my good friends from university who was teaching at the time. He said, why don't you come along, spend a few days in my school, which was in Feltham in southwest London. Did that and I loved it, and then made the decision from there to go and do what's called it was at the time called the GTP, the Graduate Teacher Programme. And I did spent 18 months at a school in Basingstoke, an 11 to 16 school. Sort of became qualified, and then from that I then went into the private sort of independent sector and went to St John's Leatherhead in Surrey, where I became a housemaster of a day house there during my time there, and loved it there, and then decided I wanted to get into the boarding aspect, and moved to Canford, where I had 4 great years there as a boarding housemaster, and then the opportunity came up here at Bryanston. And sometimes in teaching, if you're moving jobs, it means moving your kind of location, and it disrupts the whole family. And I've got 2 little lads and my wife. So the opportunity to progress but stay within this area was too good to pass down. And I was lucky enough to end up here in September 2020.
And having had that journey and lots of sort of different types of school, can you sort of highlight what you believe are the unique aspects to Bryanston?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots, to be honest. Yeah. That's what I love about this place, is that it really is got something special and distinct about it.
Sure.
And look, lots of heads will say similar things, but I think we can really back it up here. And the thing that I guess the USP that Bryanston has always had is our one-to-one tutoring. And that idea that we really, really do focus on the individual. So when any pupil joins here in year 9, they're assigned an individual tutor who is effectively their coach and their mentor. And that one person, fingers crossed, stays with them for their 5 years with us. So I have tutees, even as head, and who I meet with on a weekly basis. And we have a chat about all things academic, but also outside of the academic sphere as well. So we have weekly reporting, so I as the tutor get to see a weekly update on their progress, handing in their preps on time, attitude in lessons, etc. So we've got that constant feedback and dialogue, which is really useful. So that's truly unique, and because it's so individualized and personalized, I think our pupils go off in loads of different directions. And again, one thing I talk about, and one thing I've really noticed here, is that there isn't a traditional Bryanston pupil, and I love that. You know, some of them will go off, whether it's Art Foundation, whether it's Catering College, whether it's Oxbridge, whatever it is, as long as they found the thing that really lights their fire and they're passionate about, then that's the main thing. It's about adding value to each individual. So there are a couple of the really unique things that I think we have here and our ethos, but there's a few others as well.
And out of interest, as a sort of prospective parent who was first coming to see you, are your parent body, do they tend to be quite local? What sort of radius are you guys looking at, and what kind of international influence do you have?
Yeah, good question. So we are quite local, actually, probably more so than I realised when I joined. And there is, you know, in Dorset, Hampshire, around that area, but ultimately our kind of prep feeder schools are all over the country, and we have a wide range. So, you know, I think the biggest number of pupils would get from one school would be single figures, because the range is huge. So
sure.
Yeah, the local market, but certainly all over the south of England, and we are a full boarding school, so obviously we have international pupils as well. Somewhere around the 15% mark would be international pupils. Again, they come from a real wide range of different countries, which is great because it's more diversity and more cultures. So, so we do take in from all over, which is great.
And actually that leads me on to thinking about the sort of boarding aspect, because I think that's really interesting at the moment. I think modern parenting has changed quite significantly over the last sort of couple of years. I think lockdown particularly meant that families were more interactive than ever. Do you find, I mean, Bryanston, two questions, I guess. One, do you think that the boarding aspect still has its role in education? And also, are there enough things going on at weekends so that people can have some downtime, but also feel that there are activities should they wish to engage in them?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, does boarding still have a role? 100%, absolutely does. You know, you speak to our pupils here and they love the fact they're at a boarding school. They love the fact that as they're getting older, you know, they do become busier. The kind of the pressures that they have are increased, and they love being here. They can immerse themselves in whatever it is their passion is. So
sure.
Talking about, you know, in the evenings, rather than spending an hour on a bus commuting or whatever it may be, or half an hour, they can spend that extra time in the art department, for example, working on their project.
Yeah.
And the evenings are rich and they're varied in terms of what they can do, whether it is just social time and hanging out with friends. There's obviously got to be plenty of that.
Yeah.
So the opportunities for a bit more academic enrichment or different clubs and societies that happen in the evening. So there's so much to be gained from it. And then in terms of weekends, exactly the same. And again, it's finding that balance between allowing them to have some downtime on a weekend because it's so busy, but at the same time making sure there's lots of opportunities available for them. Because ultimately we want to be in a position where the pupils are, you know, we have weekends where they have the choice of whether they stay in or go out. There's that flexibility in our model. And ideally we want them to be choosing to stay in. You know, that if they're doing that, that shows that A, they're happy here, and B, there's things that are on at a weekend that excites them, that's interesting. So like I say, whether that's kind of internal things that we're doing based on our staff offering certain activities, or whether it's getting off site. And, you know, we're only 30 minutes away from the coast, so certainly now as we're getting into the summer term, the opportunity to get down to the beach on a weekend and do some sort of water-based activities is something that we're looking to have as well.
Sure. And I mean, I can't help myself, you are based in the most stunning part of the world. I mean, you're on the outskirts of Blandford, I mean, in your own incredible setting, but community-wise, do the students get involved in local community activities and help? Is there support given from Bryanston to the community?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I think independent schools are quite rightly putting this higher up their agenda in terms of the outreach that we do. And it's really important because, like I say, we are blessed here. We have this incredible campus, and it would be very easy just to stay here and time here because it's so glorious. But in terms of getting out there, you know, we've got a rich co-curricular program, and sort of service and outreach is a huge part of that. Whether that's local junior schools, whether it's sort of old people's homes, whatever it may be, it's a real range. But our pupils going out there, being involved in service is really important.
Absolutely. And do you think there is such a thing as a typical, I mean, you very clearly said, which is great, that they leave so there isn't a blueprint for a leaver, but are you looking for a particular child at entry point? I mean, is there a child that's best suited for Bryanston?
Yeah, obviously I get asked this quite a lot. honestly, we're looking for pupils who are going to come and get stuck in and take advantage of the opportunities on offer.
Yeah.
We are about, as a school, adding value to each individual that comes through our doors. And as long as the pupils are going to come here, like I say, with the right attitude, that's the most important thing for me. And that's where we can make the biggest difference. So it is about, and I spoke to the pupils in assembly on Monday about, just because they're at a private school doesn't mean that they've got to expect things to fall into their lap. They've got to be self-starters. They've got to take advantage. They've got to do things themselves, and that's really, really important. So that's mainly what we're looking for. Obviously we have the academic entry points and testing there, and that's important because the pupils have got to be able to access our curriculum and what we offer here. But it's not the be all and end all. It's about them as characters and personalities that's really important.
And fun enough, sort of following on from that, I mean, once they've been through their 5 magical years at Bryanston and the future, pathway is being discussed, I mean, I'm constantly wondering about the sort of university aspect, both the academic pressure and subsequent financial debt that university now holds. Do you at Bryanston educate for university place, or do you educate for life?
For life, without a shadow of a doubt. And that comes back to that individualised approach to what we... The well-trodden path is still university.
Sure.
That's still the most popular. It's great to see more alternatives coming out there. We've got 2 pupils this year who are going to do the JP Morgan graduate apprenticeship, which is great. So those sorts of programs, which are incredibly competitive, but you're going straight into industry, they're sponsoring you to go through university and paying for that, but you're out earning effectively. And 4 days a week with an organisation in the office working, and then you have a day a week at university. That sort of thing now is becoming more popular, which is great. But like I say, they're highly competitive. And hopefully, though, the number of companies doing that will grow and grow. But no, it's not all about university. It's about that individual and what's going to be right for them. Important thing.
And on the sort of educational path through Bryanston, can you just give a bit of colour to or a bit of description around the Bryanston Method, which I've read a little bit about, but I'd love our sort of followers to understand that a bit better.
Yeah, so this all comes from something called the Dalton Plan. Which is basically about promoting independence in pupils. Yeah. So the way it operates is when you come into, obviously we've amended it and we've got our own version of it, which we refer to as the Bryanston Method. So yes, we are trying to promote independence. Now, that doesn't mean that when a pupil comes to Bryanston, they're left to their own devices and there's no structure. It couldn't be further from the truth. What it means is when they come here, we teach them, we have a timetabled lesson in our curriculum when they join, where we're teaching them about what independence means, how you study independently, how you manage your time. Which again is very unique to Bryanston, 3 or 4 35-minute slots in the week where they have effectively a study period, which is normally reserved for pupils in 6th forms at most schools. It's in a supervised area, so it's not as if they're left to their own devices, but they during that time are learning to manage, right, well, what deadlines have I got coming up, what assessments, what do I need to focus on in this time I've got? And it's just starting to drip feed that idea of independence and how they manage their time. And then that goes through. So when they get to GCSEs and they are having to manage their time and revision, hopefully they are better prepared for that than if they hadn't had that grounding earlier on when they joined us. So that's really important. And as part of it as well, we have this chart, the Bryanston, the e-chart. And it used to be a piece of paper that the pupil would carry around with them, and teachers would write a comment, and they had to look after this chart. And they'd sit down with their tutor at the end of the week and they'd go through it. So that is now online, as you would imagine. So parents have access to it, staff have access to it. So that's when I sit down with my tutees. I go through the chart as a teacher. Every Friday, I put comments in as to how they've got on, or give them a sort of an engagement score, whether they handed their assignments in on time, etc. So again, it's that independence, but there's great structure underneath it as well.
Yeah. And I might have answered my own question, but I mean, I imagine that one-to-one tutoring system that you've highlighted is integral to making sure that happiness and mental health and well-being are all, that hopefully you're starting to spot issues with a personal relationship with a pupil before they kind of become something you can't handle. Would that be right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've got that, you've got the one-to-one tutor, you've obviously got their house parents as well.
Yes.
As well as everybody else involved in the process. But you're absolutely right. Rather than being one of 20 in a form group and not having one-to-one time, you have it. And as a tutor, you know, all our tutors are highly trained in this, and we've always done it. The expectation is that a tutor, in conjunction with a housemaster or housemistress, would be able to pick up on these things. And it's something that, as we talk, we speak about at Inset regularly. There's more and more mental health issues. We see that, you know, we see that nationally. We know that's the picture.
Sure.
And it's about trying to create an environment here that is proactive as opposed to reactive. And I think that's really important. So what is the environment we're providing? How are we talking to our pupils about the importance of nutrition, diet, sleep, connecting with each other, exercise, those sorts of things, to make sure that we're trying to get it right from the outset, rather than just waiting and seeing things that, you know, like I say, dealing with the symptoms when they arise. And
sure,
absolutely, the tutor has a key role in that.
And do you think, I mean, there has been some change over the period of the last 5 years or so on heads, and obviously you've stepped in, which is fantastic. Do you think that there are, for prospective parents looking at the school on sort of macro, do you think there are some lessons learnt along that journey? And do you think there would be any significant changes that you're going to implement in the short term?
At Bryanston specifically, I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. You know, Bryanston has stood the test of time, and it's got a fantastic reputation for a lot of the things that we've always done, and done them really well. That's not to say that we can't improve areas of the school, and we can. And I think there's definitely, you know, what excites me about the new head is that there's kind of 15-20% more to get out of the place, which is so exciting. So, you know, talking about my focuses going forward and what Bryanston's really going to excel in, our creative and performing arts is one of those areas. It's been a historical strength of the school, but it's about building on it now and pushing it forward again. Sport has been something we've always been very strong at, and our facilities here are second to none. But again, it's about, facilities are only so good. It's about what the outcomes that we're getting from those. So they're the kind of nod to the traditions. Looking forward as well, a big focus on the sort of the digital world and digital literacy, and making sure that our pupils are absolutely prepared for what employers are looking for in that space. And entrepreneurship and innovation as well is a key strand that we really want to embed in the school. And it kind of is there because of our creative approach that we have. But just making that a little bit more explicit, and working with a lot of our current parents and former pupils who are involved in those areas, of which there's lots, their expertise and resources about what it is they're now looking for as employers from the pupils that are coming through the system. So linking the two together is really key. But they're sort of four of the strands that we're really going to be focusing on going forward.
Because ultimately, I think, you know, it's so key, isn't it? Just to wrap up, it essentially you're starting to form and create the individual within a sort of safe framework. I mean, this period of education, that's how I sort of view it. And I think going on to university or to other avenues from there on in, giving them that independent learning and the ability to sort of really take control of their own journey, if you like, whilst having the support structure around them is critical.
And these things are now at the forefront of all the discussions around the future of education. And I'm really privileged because I think Bryanston has almost been ahead of the curve with our approach. What we've been doing over the last 100 years is actually kind of almost more relevant now than it's ever been. So we're in an amazing place to tap into and take advantage of this. We really are. We're set up for that. That's what our whole approach is about. And I'm delighted that the discussions around education and what it should look like pretty much describing what we're doing here, which is super.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Richard, thank you. A really, really useful insight into life at Bryanston, and we'll look forward to catching up with you in the next few months.
Look forward to it, Antonio. Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. Take care.
See you soon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.